Why everything feels more expensive in America. Have you ever walked into a grocery store in America, bought just a few things, and somehow walked out with a bill that feels way too high? Maybe you paid more for groceries, more for your phone, more for insurance, more for rent, and even a simple trip to a restaurant can cost much more than you expected. So, what is actually happening? Is America becoming more expensive, or are our spending habits changing? The answer is more complicated than simply saying everything costs more. And once you understand the real reasons, your monthly bills start to make a lot more sense. Let's start with the biggest reason: inflation. Inflation means prices generally rise over time. Imagine a grocery basket that used to cost $100. If prices rise by 20%, that same basket could eventually cost around $120. But here's the part many people misunderstand. When inflation slows down, prices don't automatically return to where they were before. If prices increase significantly over several years, a lower inflation rate simply means prices are rising more slowly. They don't necessarily go backward. That's why you might hear inflation is falling. But then you go shopping and think, why does everything still feel expensive? Because slower inflation isn't the same thing as cheaper prices. The higher price level can remain. Now look at housing. For millions of Americans, housing is one of the biggest monthly expenses. Rent can consume a large portion of a household's income, and buying a home can require an enormous amount of money. But housing isn't just the mortgage or rent. There are property taxes, home insurance, utilities, repairs, maintenance, and sometimes homeowners association fees. When these costs rise together, housing becomes much more expensive, even if the home itself hasn't changed. And in many desirable cities, demand for housing can be extremely strong. When lots of people want to live in an area but there aren't enough homes available, prices can rise. That creates a painful equation. Higher housing costs plus other rising expenses means less money left over every month. Next comes food. When you see a higher price on a carton of eggs, a loaf of bread, or a restaurant meal, you might blame the store. But the price of food is connected to a huge supply chain. Farmers need equipment, businesses need workers. Food needs to be processed, packaged, transported, refrigerated, stored, and sold. Each step has costs. If transportation becomes more expensive, that can affect prices. If labor costs increase, that can affect prices. If weather damages crops, supply can fall. And if demand rises, prices can increase. Restaurants have another layer. A restaurant doesn't just pay for ingredients, it also pays for employees, rent, electricity, insurance, equipment, cleaning, delivery, and other operating expenses. So when your $15 meal becomes $18 or $20, there's usually more happening behind the scenes than just the food itself. And it's not only physical products that cost more. Services can become more expensive too. Think about healthcare, insurance, childcare, car repairs, education, entertainment, and professional services. These businesses also have employees, buildings, equipment, technology, insurance, and operating expenses. And many services require people to perform the work. A machine can produce thousands of products, but you still need a mechanic to diagnose your car, a technician to repair your air conditioner, a childcare worker to care for children, or a plumber to fix a leak. When labor and operating costs increase, service prices can increase too. Here's another major expense: transportation. Buying a car is only the beginning. You also pay for fuel, insurance, maintenance, repairs, registration, and potentially financing costs. If the price of vehicles rises, financing becomes more expensive, or insurance premiums increase, the total cost of owning a car can become much higher. And in many parts of America, a car isn't optional. People need one to get to work, take children to school, buy groceries, and visit family. So transportation can become a major part of the household budget. There's also a psychological effect happening. Your income might have increased. But if many of your expenses increased at the same time, you may not feel richer. Imagine someone earning $60,000 several years ago. Then they get a raise and earn $70,000. That sounds great. But if housing, food, insurance, transportation, and other expenses rise significantly, the extra income may disappear surprisingly quickly. This is why people often say, I'm making more money, but I don't feel like I have more money. The important number isn't just your salary, it's your purchasing power. In simple terms, how much can your income actually buy? And then there's something completely different: small, recurring expenses, streaming services, music subscriptions, cloud storage, apps, gaming services, delivery memberships, premium accounts. Individually, many of these don't seem expensive: $5 here, $10 there, $15 somewhere else. But add 10 or 15 subscriptions together, and suddenly you're spending $100 a year. The problem isn't necessarily one expensive purchase, it's the combination of dozens of small automatic payments. And because many subscriptions charge automatically, people may not even notice them every month. So, why does everything feel more expensive? Because several forces can hit your budget at the same time. Inflation raised the overall price level. Housing became a major expense. Food and services became more expensive. Transportation costs can add up quickly, and recurring subscriptions make spending easier to overlook. But there's an important lesson here: you can't control every price in the economy. You can't control rent in your city. You can't control gas prices. You can't control grocery prices, but you can control how you respond. Start by tracking where your money actually goes. Look at your three biggest expenses. Then look for recurring charges you don't really use. And most importantly, don't judge your financial situation by your salary alone. Ask a better question: how much of my income is left after everything I have to pay for? Because in an expensive economy, earning more matters, but keeping more matters too. And that's the part of the American money story that doesn't always get talked about. If you found this useful, subscribe for more simple explanations of money, business, and everyday life in America.